reborn from ashes. Dude, even autotune won't do anything. Hello friends of the first person genre. I didn't make up this lovely song of mine. This sounds when you start a new game in Black Bekker and reminds me of I Live Again from, that's right, Blood. But before we plunge into the adventure, we can choose between 3 difficulty levels. We will talk more about the difficulty levels later. I chose the middle level for myself and found the game pleasant throughout. For players who like to shoot around massively, there could be problems with the ammunition in the first levels. I haven't had any problems with it myself, but I've always been someone who usually uses my ammunition sparingly. But don't worry, you still find plenty of ammunition in later levels. If you want, you can also use the easiest level of difficulty, as this requires a higher amount of ammunition to collect. There is also a tutorial, which you can skip and then take straight to the first level. Since this tutorial is not as dry as many other tutorials, but acts like an extra level in which you also learn part of the story, I can only recommend playing it. Similar to Caleb rising from a grave, our hero Black Bekker awakens in a dark hallway. By the way, if you are wondering who Caleb is, that's the hero from Blood. You know, the guy with I live. Wait a minute. Hey? Yeah? Yeah? Please come here. Please do it yourself. I live again. Caleb, this is so much better. Suddenly, a voice comes out of nowhere. The voice belongs to Kitty Darkstar, a hacker who speaks to us over the loudspeakers in the hallway. She addresses us by the name Black.
Black? Black! Oh, endlich, du bist wach.
Huh? Black? Wer?
We repeat this name questioningly, don't seem to know exactly who we are or what's going on. This is how Black Bekker's tutorial begins. During the tutorial, Kitty explains to us that we are in the Cyberfox Tower, which is the main military base of the Resistance. Or rather, it was him, because the villain of the game, Adi Engler, had the tower razed to the ground by his subjects, the Neutrons. Adi Engler, the old mean Peter, doesn't like metal. What a scoundrel. Then, to demonstrate his power to everyone, he separated part of the mainland from the rest and sent it high towards the sky. There it now floats as a gigantic fortress of the Adi Engler, above a lake of acid. Somewhere in this fortress there is a prison cell, and in this cell sits Kitty. Since we want to go there anyway, so that we can really give Adi a good slap in the face, we will of course save the Kitty at the same time. Or not. The game offers 3 different endings depending on what we decide in the end. The developer came up with the story himself, namely Mina Bekker,
Ich bin der Macher.
who also embodies our hero. Black Bekker was created single-handedly by Armin Bekker, alias Mina Bekker. He came up with the story completely on his own and programmed this game with the Acknex engine. If you've been following my channel for a while, you may have seen some Acknex titles here. There were also titles that were programmed by an entire team and were ultimately available for sale in the store. Personally, I think Black Bekker is far better to play than most of these titles. It took Mina Bekker 16 years to develop Black Bekker, which was ultimately released in 2015. But hey friends, think of the good old Duke. There were a lot of people on the Duke, and I don't mean the Duke babes. No, I mean the programmers. And how long did it take? 14 years. Whole team. It's also very interesting to know that Mina Bekker does something completely different professionally. Programming is more of a hobby. For me, Mina Bekker plays like a shooter from the 90s, with some references to old titles from that time. Of course, I immediately noticed the face in the HUD, which reminds me of Doom Guy from Doom. By the way, unlike usual, the position of the HUD is not at the bottom, but on the right of the screen. I also had to think of Doom when I saw the fists we initially used to fight our opponents. The good old brass knuckles, straight in the face. But to relieve some of the strain on our delicate fists, we find the odor of the beast. A deodorant spray can that sprays the beast's concentrate. I don't know what beast it is, but perhaps it is the collected contents of countless festival dixies combined into one concentrate. Another inspiration, the good old deodorant from Blood. The weapons are rather special. You won't find the typical representatives such as pump guns and assault rifles here. In addition to the deodorant, there are projectile weapons like the Mincer or the Attack Batson, as well as an energy weapon, the Colin Brewer, which brings me straight back to Doom, namely the plasma gun. Finding and collecting treasure is also typical of earlier shooters. There are metal CDs all over the map that you can collect. These don't have any real use, but they do give us points for our high score. There are also some secrets hidden on the maps, and it's worth finding them. Because the mentioned high score at the end of the level consists of the following: remaining health status, number of enemies defeated, and secrets and CDs found. This adds up the points and the hidden secrets. Yes, you know, classic games like Doom, Blood or Duke 3D. However, with a total of 5 weapons, we are well equipped against the Neutrons. The Neutrons are the standard enemies in the game, and they come in 2 variants. The normal Neutrons try to hit you in the mouth in close combat. The Executors also have an arm weapon, which makes them dangerous even from a distance. There are another handful of different enemies. My love-hate relationship has always been with the floating head Likey with his evil dead voice. When Likey showed up, I was usually happy because of his voice. But a little scumbag is sometimes so hard to hit, likes to hide and then suddenly reappear out of nowhere. Of course, there are also bosses. One of them is waiting for you. Terrible. Really bad. Yes, Psycho Doreen will scare you. Doreen is Black's ex, and this crazy nutcase has been watching too much Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Similar to the Nemesis in Resident Evil 3, Doreen chases us through dark corridors, and it really gave me chills at times. The last time I had this feeling was with Call of Cthulhu: Dark Corners of the Earth. What the? Doreen! Stop it with this shit! Gas is so expensive anyway!
Sorry.
The levels are generally really different in design. At the beginning the levels are a bit similar, but later in the game there is a lot of variety. There are also bonus levels to discover in which you fight your way through ice and fire, among other things. The bonus level Ice Moon Dasher was one of the hardest for me. Oh yes, we wanted to talk about the difficulty levels. If you finish the game on hard and find all the objects, gets a 4th level unlocked. It's supposed to be so difficult that even the developer can't do it. It should be mentioned here, that Mina Bekker tried the level without a new life system. You can now collect extra lives, 3 of them in total. This didn't exist before, you had to complete the level without dying. Since you take your previous health status with you into each new level, this could actually make the whole level a lot more difficult. That's why the extra life system was introduced in the last version. There are still walkthroughs for the old version on YouTube. In total, if I'm not mistaken, there are 3 YouTubers who have played it. One of them is Mina Bekker, the woman at Mina Bekker's side who played through the game together with Mina Bekker in the old version without a life system. Feel free to take a look at her walkthrough. So that you don't have to search for long, I link the videos in the info box. I could imagine that without the life system, together with the difficult or even extremely difficult 4th level, it could be an incentive for people who like difficult games, like the Souls-like community does, for example. However, I can't say whether the new system is as difficult in the extremely difficult mode, because I haven't played this mode. If anyone tries out a new system, I would of course be happy to receive feedback in the comments. Would I play it again? Yes, actually this is a game I would play again. This 4th mode in particular is an incentive for me because, as an old friend of the genre, I want to know how far I can get. In addition, for me, the high score is clearly one of the strengths of the game. For example, would it be a way for players to compete? Whoever has the highest number of points on day X wins. The whole thing is divided into 4 leagues, namely according to difficulty levels. Of course, you can do the same with any other game that has a high score. Little anecdote. I didn't know Mina Bekker and found out about this game through a comment I had under one of my videos in 2018. It was from a user named Mina Bekker. Since then I have been in contact with him and have gained some background knowledge about Mina Bekker. That's why I know how much love there is in Mina Bekker and how much Mina Bekker cares about it. A lot of things are self-designed and handmade, but you don't realize it at first. Where from? How would you even know that this one guy developed this all by himself? Well, you learn in passing that he programmed it on his own, but that's not what I mean. I mean the enemies, the weapons, the story, the levels in their backgrounds, all alone. Yes, it was released in 2015 alongside titles like Wolfenstein The Old Blood or Dying Light, and it's not one of these big AAA titles. But with all this knowledge, Mina Bekker has even more value for me, and I personally had a lot of fun. So friends, if you like to try Mina Bekker yourself, you can download it using the download link in the info box. The game is in German, but offers English subtitles. Mina Bekker is also completely free, but if you want, you're welcome to leave an offering in the form of a donation. Praise the Min. If you don't have time to play yourself, that's no problem. Just watch my walkthrough or the one from the other YouTubers. I have included a few additional translations in my walkthrough. Since I played the game in the English version, where the voice acting is German and the subtitles are English, there are parts of the game that you won't understand if you don't speak German. Oh yes, if you like talking about shooters and can converse in German, you can also join the Facebook group Ego-Shooter Alter Schule. Mina Bekker is the Admin here. There is only discussion and information about first-person shooters. I would also think that Mina Bekker is definitely recommended for people from the metal scene because of its setting. People who like shooters with a 90s shooter flair are also in the right place, I think. But where there is light, there is also shadow. But it's just a small shadow. What struck me negatively was the movement in the water. The up and down movement when swimming feels like the good black is made of styrofoam. There is no way to save yourself. The game automatically saves after each completed level. This increases the difficulty of some passages in the game. But for players who would like to play a certain level again, there is no option to select it directly. That's not a real problem, because I simply created an extra folder and saved the B2K save folder after each level I finished. However, I had to leave the game after each level, but I can now play any level again at any time. For my taste, the mincer takes up a lot of space, which limits the view. The music is great and varied. There are songs that sound like Doom, there are sounds that are reminiscent of the Amiga era, there is metal, etc. As I said, everything is really good, but unfortunately I can't be turned down any louder. And then there are the crashes. In the old version there were always crashes, I only had 4 of them. I spent many hours with the game, because I was looking for all the secrets, and because of that I keep replaying the levels, and I think 4 crashes are completely okay. I would say now we have enough theory, and then I'll send you to the practical part. Thanks for listening, take care and see you next time. Ciao!